Phantom, no. Silica sand.
Okay.
Fugitive. Oh, we're starting?
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, March 19th, 2026. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, March 12th, 2026, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, March 12, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 11, the proposed notice of hearing in docket 1 AC 260 associated with agenda item 12, or the draft order to reopen notice and request for comment in docket 9800 CE 100 associated with agenda item 13.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 7 through 11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notice of hearing associated with agenda item 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
In docket 9800 CE 100, I move we approve the order to reopen, notice, and request for comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That does bring us to our first of 3 discussion items today. Agenda item number 14, docket 5 NF 2026, USF Nonprofit Grant Awards. So I'll lead discussion on this one. Just by way of background, Wisconsin Administrative Code Section PSC 160.125 sub 2 provides for USF funded access programs or projects by nonprofit groups, and this is referred to as the Nonprofit Access Grant Program. The purpose of this program is to facilitate affordable access to essential telecommunication services through programs or projects that complement or are not available through other USF programs. The Commission has a long history with this program. We've approved grants as part of it for the past 17 years, and those grants have assisted low-income customers, customers with disabilities, and customers who reside in high-cost areas of the state, and we've helped them gain access to critical telecommunication services through these grants. This current grant round has a total of $500,000 available for distribution to qualified applicants to further support those efforts. Our commission staff opened fiscal year 2026 round of the USF Nonprofit Access Grant Program to applicants on December 4th of 2025 and received 41 applications with a total grant request of $2,360,472.17. So by comparison, our 2025 round of this program received 19 applications with a total funding request of $1,039,126.89. So first, I just want to applaud our USF team for their tremendous outreach efforts promoting the program. Clearly, as evidenced by the sheer volume of proposals received this round, they did excellent work here, and so I thank them for that. In addition to the outreach done by the PSC team, another reason that program demand significantly outweighs available funding this round is due to the Trump administration's short-sighted, petty, and fragile decision to terminate the Digital Equity Capacity Grant Program in May 2025, because that program included funding for similar activities as this program, and now it no longer exists. So here we are. Given the number of applications received, Commission staff performed an initial screening of the 41 applications based on 4 statutory eligibility criteria that are laid out in our memo. And as part of that process and review, 1 applicant was deemed ineligible as a result of the initial screening process. Following the initial screening, the panel scored the remaining 40 eligible applications using merit evaluation categories informed by criteria for nonprofit applications and outlined in Wisconsin Administrative Code Section PSC 160.125 sub C. Those categories include project purpose and need, project impact, project implementation, evaluation of project goals and outcomes, and project budget. The screening panel evaluated and scored each application and ranked them in merit order. In instances where requests exceed available funds, the Commission must apply its discretion and expertise to select the applications that best serve the public interest and meet the purposes of the USF and the Nonprofit Access Grant Program. So consistent with past decisions, my preference when making these determinations is to follow the direction of our evaluation team. They are the frontline subject matter experts that put in the hard work of thoroughly analyzing and scoring each application. Absent blatant or compelling reasons to seek or support different funding allocations, I strongly prefer to follow their guidance. Here, the evaluation team identified high-scoring projects that presented clear implementation strategies, timelines of proposed activities, partnerships with community and government stakeholders, effective evaluation metrics, and reasonable and clearly itemized project budgets. Based on that evaluation, the team presented 3 funding alternatives for our consideration. Under Alternative 1, funding would be directed to the 14 highest-scoring applications, accounting for $423,377. The remaining $76,623 would be granted to the application ranked 15th on the list, United Way of Wisconsin, as a partial award. So they sought $86,886 in their application, and as I said, there is $76,623 remaining. Importantly, and as noted in our commission memo, the limited reduction in funding for United Way is unlikely to compromise their project's overall feasibility. While the $76,623 would be the largest award in this 2026 grant round, it's clearly within the range of others, and I didn't see that as a significant outlier. Further, United Way has an expansive reach throughout the state, so this would have a statewide reach, not just local, and they have a very strong reputation for being a good partner. To that point, this application included a robust match contribution demonstrating United Way's commitment to seek and deliver other fund sources in support of telecommunications access. Moreover, the project scope here aligns very well with the goals of the program. And in supporting the partial award to United Way, the commission would be granting awards to the 15 highest scoring applications evaluated on the metrics, which to me is wholly appropriate, defensible, and aligned with our project team's recommendations, program team's recommendations. So ultimately, to me, this was a very straightforward decision, and I strongly support Alternative 1, which would be to award the $500,000 in nonprofit access grants to the recommended 15 applicants in the amounts indicated in Appendix 1 of our memo. Very, very briefly, I will touch on the differences between Alternative 1, 2, and 3, and then turn it over to my colleagues for their positions. So under Alternative 2, the commission would again fully fund the top 14 applications and then allocate that remaining $76,623 as partial awards to the 15th and 16th highest scoring applications. So it would split those things between United Way and the Wisconsin Library Services. So under that alternative, the partial award would be for about half of the requested amounts that those two entities applied for. To me, this work would require 2 projects to scale down, not just one. I think that United Way has proven that their infrastructure and administrative systems are very strong. And again, the reduction from 86 to 37 would be significant for them versus the reduction from 86 to 76 under Alternative 1. I think that 16th project, Wisconsin Library Services, would probably have to scale down a lot, and that would impact the project if we had to split that remaining fund. So I think Alternative 2 is just, to me, a weaker, I understand that it touches 2 more organizations, but to me it's a weaker position in that what was proposed would have to be significantly scaled back. And so to me, that juice is not worth the squeeze. And then under Alternative 3, we would allocate the remaining $76,623 as partial awards to the 16th and 19th highest scoring applications. I think that cons of this would be skipping 15. I think that merit order on the metrics is important. This alternative would also jump 2 other viable high scoring applications just to make the math work. And to me, that's a reach. I don't see a strong, compelling reason to not go with Alternative 1. And so for those reasons, I think that it reasonably directs funding to the highest rated applications and is a very clean use of that $500,000 this round. So I'm at Alternative 1, and I will turn it over to first Commissioner Nieto and then Commissioner Hawkins. Thank you.
Thank you. I was at Alternative 1 as well here. Just a couple quick comments. I would echo your kudos to staff on the good outreach and good work that they did in preparing this memo. We have really great options here. I thought Alternatives 1, 2, and 3 presented some compelling alternatives and options, and they are all options to get affordable access to telecommunication services for customers with barriers. Ultimately, I thought 1 was preferable, again, because I think for some of the same reasons. United Way has that reach. It has the statewide reach. It has kind of the built-in infrastructure to reach at scale as opposed to divvying up smaller grant awards and kind of chopping up that scale, which is why I went with one. And I think I kind of went back and forth with being able to award grants to more organizations or different organizations we haven't worked with before. And ultimately, I came to, really the ultimate end purpose is to serve as many individuals or Wisconsinites as end-use customers as possible, as opposed to as many organizations. So I was with Alt 1 there. Thanks.
Thank you. Great points. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks. Yeah, I was originally torn between Alt 1 and Alt 2. I saw the appeal of Alt 2 getting an additional organization, as Commissioner Nieto was just discussing. But to Chair Strand's point, it was unclear how a significant scale down in the award would impact that one. And I was also drawn to, again, the geographic reach of the additional organization, the Library Services Organization that's proposed in Alt 2. But given the scaling down, it would be likely that some of that geographic reach would end up being limited by the reduced size of the project. So given the cleaner nature and also the statewide reach of the United Way project, I'm fine joining my colleagues at Alt 1.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. I think we're all in agreement here, and we are ready for a motion.
In docket 5NF 2026, I move we approve the 2026 USF nonprofit grants consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We are moving on now to agenda item 15, docket 9709, FG 2026. I will hand this over to Commissioner Nieto to lead our discussion of this.
Thank you. So by way of introduction, the Commission's Office of Energy Innovation administers a range of programs designed to advance effective energy planning and deliver tangible benefits to Wisconsin residents and businesses. This includes both the statewide Focus on Energy program and the federally supported work of our state energy office. And the Energy Innovation Grant Program we are discussing today is an important part of that portfolio. By way of background, this program is supported by federal funds originally provided through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and it is administered through the U.S. Department of Energy State Energy Program. In 2017, the Commission made a policy decision to repurpose repaid funds from the former Clean Energy Manufacturing Revolving Loan Fund into this competitive grant program with the necessary federal approvals in place, and we've been running the grant program ever since. One important feature of this program is the degree of discretion the Commission has in shaping eligibility. Federal guidance does not prescribe specific subrecipient types, which allows us to define and refine over time the categories of entities that can participate. To date, that has included a broad set of public and nonprofit entities, often referred to as the MUSH market, which is municipalities, schools, universities, hospitals, utilities, cooperatives, and nonprofit organizations. As we've gained experience across grant rounds, we've continued to clarify and evolve those definitions to align with program goals and implementation realities. Those program goals, which are established at the federal level, are worth keeping in mind as we consider the path forward. They include improving energy efficiency, strengthening energy security and resilience, reducing costs and waste, encouraging investment in local energy resources, and supporting economic growth alongside environmental improvement. At the same time, there are some important guardrails. Federal regulations, specifically Title 10 of the Code of Federal Regulations, limit the use of funds for certain types of activities, including most construction, transportation projects, and research or experimental technologies. And these constraints shape both the types of projects we can support and how these projects are structured. Finally, as context, I want to highlight a recent development that may affect program implementation going forward. Under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, DOE has issued an updated determination for the current state energy program plan. This is discussed in our memo, and it is discussed in comments to the memo. Unlike prior years, this determination is going to require in this round additional federal review for any project involving ground disturbance or vegetative impacts. This change could increase the number of projects subject to additional individual review and could have implications for project timelines from award to ability to be completed. So what we are doing here is we are setting the program eligibility for applicants for the 6th round of EIGP, and then we are establishing what the eligibility and maximum grant requests will be, and that will turn into application instructions that will go online and open up the application round. So I'll turn here to the decision points that we have in front of us. First is eligible applicants. And again, as a starting point, we do have approved eligibility by US DOE for participation from both manufacturers and the mush market that I described. And for round 6, one option before us is to open the program to all eligible applicant types. Based on staff's experience administering prior rounds, this approach could allow us to focus more squarely on the merits of proposed projects and the priority activities we are trying to advance, rather than drawing distinctions based on who is applying. By comparison, in earlier rounds, we did establish specific areas of interest or AOIs, and I think we saw some unintended consequences out of that. There was some confusion by applicants about how their projects fit within those categories, and a concern that potentially strong projects may have been excluded simply because of how eligibility or categories were defined. So keeping that broader eligibility would better align with our broader strategic objective, which is ensuring that the benefits of these investments reach a wide and diverse set of stakeholders and communities across the state. So with that, I was at alternative 1 for eligible applicants. I am going to stop here and turn it over to my colleagues for their votes on eligible applicants before moving on to the activities and maximum grant requests. Chair Strand?
I was at alternative 1 for this one too. I think it's important to keep that broad base, especially because to your point about the mush description, these are applicants who might not be able to access financial resources for these types of undertakings from other sources. And I think we want to keep it broad and have as many entities eligible as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Hawkins?
I was at alternative 1 as well for the same reasons.
Great, thank you. And then when we get into eligible activities and maximum grant requests, and then available funds per activity and overall budget, those are our next decision points here. I have a handout on this one. So essentially, staff laid out what I thought was a really good baseline for establishing the activities and maximum grant requests. I don't have modifications to the main table on the eligible activities and maximum grant requests, but we also, in response to kind of the great baseline staff provided, received some really good comments, and we got some comments in response to information we requested comments on. And those comments did lead me to want to slightly modify what we put in our application instructions. Number 1, to clarify some eligibility for some eligible activities where applicable, and number 2, to further expand what we are clarifying we're doing under the planning category. So I will provide a handout and show in writing exactly what I'm talking about. And then I do support the option to place a filter on the implementation activities and essentially place a priority on eligible activities that don't require the groundbreaking and the ground disturbance, so that we receive more focus on applications that will be able to successfully make it through the process, the approval process with the US DOE. That doesn't mean I don't think we should remove implementation projects altogether just because there may be a longer DOE NEPA process. There are implementation projects that don't require groundbreaking whatsoever, and I think having more of those in our ultimate basket of applications we receive would be better than having fewer of those and would kind of increase our odds of completion. But I don't think that means we should rule out projects that have groundbreaking or ground disturbance altogether. So I did want to place that suggested priority on those activities. And then what that led me to do under the last set of alternatives for the overall budget was to go with the overall $10 million budget, but slightly shift some of the dollars away from implementation one, activity one on the renewables and storage, and shift some dollars into the energy efficiency bucket. So if we could distribute the handout, I can show visually what I'm talking about here and then turn it over to my colleagues for reactions and their ideas. Thank you.
For those listening, the handout should be available on the Commission's website under News and Events and Commission Calendar.
Okay, so as you're looking at the handout here, this eligible activities and maximum grant requests, you'll see that nothing has changed in this table. This is what is proposed in staff's memo. And I would just note for information that eligible activity number one, renewable energy and storage, these are all kind of by definition in the application instructions, they're implementation activities. And this is where I would prioritize, again, activities that don't require the groundbreaking and vegetative disturbance. As you look at the activities under that list, like solar PV, there are rooftop solar PV systems that don't require ground disturbance. There are also battery systems that don't require ground disturbance. So there will still be projects that come in under this category and meet that prioritization. And there will likely also be projects applied for that do disturb ground and that are aware of the extra DOE requirements and kind of what that process could look like for their project. And I think this is a way for us to see all of those still and be able to weigh that, but not have too large of a basket that's all towards ground disturbing projects. And then as you look at eligible activity 2 on the standard list, I would just note again for folks listening that this is also implementation projects. So this is tech implementation. It includes energy efficiency, demand response. It includes C&I process efficiency projects. It includes, importantly, beneficial electrification, which includes EV-related projects, EV buses, et cetera. I think we've had some good comments in focus dockets about emphasizing beneficial electrification and the importance of that, and just a reminder to folks that the energy efficiency and demand response implementation category here is a great place for beneficial electrification projects as well. And I am flagging that because you'll see below that I suggest increasing the total dollar amount available for these types of activities, energy efficiency, process efficiency, et cetera. And then category 3 is energy planning and feasibility studies. I didn't see a need to change anything at the high level table of this category, but I do show what our application instructions look like and what I would suggest for some markup to those in response to some of the comments that we received. So we already have technology transfer and market transformation planning as one of our planning categories. We got a comment from WLGCC about potentially doing geothermal market transformation. I thought that was a good comment, and we already have market transformation available, and I would just insert the underlined geothermal market transformation planning to clarify that that's available under this already existing list of activity types for planning. And then I added one dot point at the bottom, which is in response to some of the comments received by Slipstream and I believe also WLGCC, which is that under planning efforts, workforce training, education, or technical assistance efforts should be considered a type of planning effort under Category 3. I don't think they need their own line in the table or their own separate budget amounts or anything like that. I think they just fit under planning efforts. And I would be open to reviewing applications and projects for workforce training or technical assistance under planning efforts and kind of keeping us more broadly open to that is what I think this modification to the application instructions would do. And then finally, when you get down to available funds per activity and overall budget, because of the modifications that I'm suggesting we make, what I would do is take renewable energy and energy storage and change that overall dollar amount available in the bucket to 3 million from 4.5 in line with that prioritization and potentially receiving fewer large ground disturbing projects under that category. And I would shift that dollar amount down to the energy efficiency and demand response projects, which include everything that I described earlier about beneficial electrification and process efficiency. And these are implementation projects, just like Category 1 is. So I thought that was a reasonable shift and adjustment to adjust for what we know we are going into in this round in terms of a different DOE process. And in response to the great comments we received, which I appreciated as well. So with that, I'm going to pause and ask my colleagues if they'd like to chime in on these next two sets of alternatives or on the table, or if they'd like a moment to process. Thanks.
I am happy to do either and prepared to do either. So I'll defer to Commissioner Hawkins
I'm
as
good.
well. Okay.
To keep chatting.
Okay. We can keep going. No break.
Great,
Thank
okay,
you.
thank you. All right, so going back to our memo alternatives, we are at eligible activities and maximum grant requests. So this would place me at alternative 1. I would use the eligible activities as listed in our table, and then I would do sub-alt A, establishing that priority for projects that aren't disturbing ground. And then I'm doing that also with the caveat that I'm suggesting to staff to modify the application instructions as I have visualized here, but I don't think that's necessarily one of the alternatives. It's more an implementation kind of direction. So I'll say alternative 1, sub-alt A for this one with that explanation. Chair Strand?
Thank you. I am comfortable with the application instruction changes, and I appreciate you adding those. So the red line on the handout. I am uncomfortable with the prioritization of eligible activities, which I won't belabor that right now because it factors into my decision on the next item as well. But I'll just say in general, I'm worried about a priority list right now having a chilling effect on certain types of projects. I think we, as we know, have not been in the business of pre-complying with any federal mandates, especially or new ideas, especially ones that are completely counter and hypocritical to all the things that they're saying and doing regarding permitting, environmental impacts of things, stripping out wetland protection, et cetera. And so to me, the ground disturbance issue is a red herring and a way for them to further stifle and disincentivize renewable development. And I fully appreciate and agree with the stipulation about rooftop solar or non-ground disturbing batteries. But in general, I think given the war on renewables, this commission has been very clear that we are not interested in participating in that. And I think that we should continue to stand up in that support and be broad at this point, and not send any of those signals. Again, this is just the scoping portion, so I think if we are starting to see things that concern us regarding project viability, et cetera, we can make tweaks and be flexible as we go along, but I really would prefer that we do not get in the sandbox with the people who are trying to shut these kinds of programs down. But that's my take on prioritization of certain projects over others.
And as a follow-up question to that, Chair Strand, do you want to share what your linked vote would be on the overall budget?
Yeah, I just would support leaving it as is, so the 4.5 to activity 1, renewable energy and energy storage, 4.5 to energy efficiency and demand response, and then $1 million to comprehensive energy planning and feasibility studies for the reasons that I stated. Also, we have some really excellent quality, viable energy efficiency and demand response programs available. I think we don't want to be overly redundant or duplicative of those, first of all. Second of all, those seem to be like the least in the crosshairs of these types of kind of innovative energy projects from the federal government. I'm not saying that that's going to remain that way, but right now it is. I think HEAD, Homes, and HERE, and those important funding opportunities that have already provided over $9 million in savings to Wisconsin residents gone away. I would be more inclined to try to shift from that activity 1 category into activity 2. But again, at this point in the process right now, I don't want to send chilling effect signals to potential applicants or potential projects out of like fear of the DOE. So that's where I am on that. I was just at alternative 1 for decision item 2, but support the application instruction changes, and then I was at alternative 1 for decision item 3 regarding the budgets.
Okay, thank you.
thank
And
you.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks. I'm, excuse me, pretty closely aligned with everything that Chair Strand just said. Given the counterintuitive federal policies that we're seeing as it relates to supporting geothermal and also wanting to do away with the environmental reviews that Chair Strand just highlighted, I wasn't too caught up in the potential for delay at the federal level. There's a ton of momentum, and they kept the ITC for geothermal, and now that's clearly ground disturbing. And so I think there's a lot of positive signals from DOE on some of those technologies, and so I don't want to artificially constrain which types of projects we might assume could get caught up or could be problematic by the review in the DOE. So I'm speaking to the prioritization. I support the broader prioritization. I'll also note, just to pile on, that the industry is transforming in a pretty major way, and we're seeing a ton of solar and BESS all over the place. And so if we're restricting it to just that, we lose out on the diversity benefits of different technology types. So I get there's a difference in scale and location, which is important as well, but another reason why I am sort of supportive of the broader scope for the eligibility there for the types of projects. And then I also, and just one more thing on the ground disturbance, it's my understanding that we already have less of those types of projects anyhow. We see a lot of, solar PV and storage type projects. And so I think we might already have, just based on what we get in the program in the past, applicants are kind of self-selecting in that direction already. So I'd be wary of any additional signaling that we would provide there. As it relates to the budget, I had a similar concern as Chair Strand, recognizing we have very robust energy efficiency programs and now new beneficial electrification and weatherization and energy efficiency programs, that if we funnel everything into that, it seems to be like we're going all in at the expense of other meritorious approaches on some of these projects. So that's something I asked about in my briefing on this, trying to get a better sense of how all these things work together. I get there's been some synergies of participating in 2 programs, making projects really, really great, but I'm not necessarily sold that that's the best use of these program dollars, given that there are other great programs out there. So the only thing I haven't spoken to, I think, is the red lines, which I fully support. One other thing that I think is missing from the red lines that I would like to propose, perhaps, is I think a comment from WLGCC related to geothermal planning. And so there's geothermal market transformation planning, but there's not geothermal project planning. And so one thing that I thought their comments were supporting was setting up these applicants to then go after the ITC that still is available to them. And that's different than market transformation planning. This is potentially under the comprehensive energy plans, but all that sub-bullet speaks to is generating energy locally, and that isn't what geothermal systems are. So maybe like a specific call out of potential for generating energy locally, utilizing geothermal energy, and creation of goals for savings and generation, something to add that as a call out, because I was thinking it might be worth its own sort of planning line in the table, similar to microgrids. But I do like what you did with including it in the technology transfer. But if we get a call out for geothermal in comprehensive energy planning in the first sub-bullet there, I think that might be sufficient, and it doesn't need to be its own row in the table. Because I think utilizing that planning side will be important to then leverage the ITCs that still exist for geothermal.
Thank you. So, okay, a couple of things. On the latest thing that Commissioner Hawkins noted, which is the essentially what would be geothermal feasibility studies. I looked at those as well, and I had the same thought about they should potentially be like a separate line on the table, just like the microgrid feasibility studies are, versus building them in. And I think one thing I went back and forth on is, again, going back to this overall ground disturbing conversation. I thought it was a good suggestion on the part of WLGCC. WLGCC was also concerned about communities and grantees not being able to complete projects, barriers that they've already had working with DOE on the Buy American compliance, and what these future NEPA barriers would look like under limited DOE review of our projects. And these geothermal feasibility studies oftentimes require boring into the ground for, I think, most times. So I went back and forth with that one. I was interested in it and open to it, but I think if we're ultimately going to go in the direction of not putting a filter on and trying to kind of limit the number of applications that we get that disturb ground, I think that would be consistent with what you two are saying and would make sense. I do think those feasibility studies could just be added to the application instructions, like you said, if we want to consider those part of an energy plan or just their own separate bullet point. So that would be if we were maintaining essentially the same type of funding structure, $50,000 for an eligible applicant, I would imagine would be the most common type of application we would receive for a geothermal feasibility study, which would mean it could just go in as essentially another bullet point under the application instructions. First, I'm open to that and had thought about that. I think going back to the overall ground disturbing discussion and DOE, ultimately, I'll join you both where you're at. I think there is just a difficult back and forth to do here. I don't think that it is helpful for us to pre-comply with any designs by the federal government to stymie renewable energy solar projects or anything like that. I think it is more looking at from the implementation side of things on our side, the challenges that we've already had with certain grant projects being able to get through the federal process, and then what that means for the time invested by the community, and then ultimately the project not coming to fruition and a lot of work and time is lost. And when WLGCC made those comments about its communities who have struggled with that aspect, and knowing that there's going to be this additional layer of challenge, we're not going to get the same NEPA review process that we got under previous administrations. That resonated with me. I definitely took it to heart. That said, applicants can go into this process, can apply for the projects that they choose to. They can know that there are question marks around what the process will be. I think we have to do a good job of communicating that so that folks, eyes are open as they invest time and resources into applying for our program and our projects. And that's really the angle that I was looking at it from, is more of the interaction and the service that we're providing to the communities who are investing with us here, and not giving folks false hope who are working on very limited budgets. All of that said, I also understand the other side of the coin and had thought about that too, and I can ultimately join you both on what would be the overall budget and not doing the prioritization. So basically where that would leave me would be at the table that we discussed, the instructions to staff about the application instructions, including an extra bullet point on geothermal feasibility, which I was fine at, and then staff's table on available funds per activity. All right, so I'm going to turn it over again for reactions to that. Chair Strand?
Just to get out of the way, I'm comfortable with the addition, the other geothermal addition. Thank you for catching that. I think it's important that we're including both because they are different. On the bigger issue, I think while these potential applicants may not have access to a lot of other fund sources, I do think that they are relatively sophisticated and are equipped to understand the risks. And to your point, communicating the risks are important if they're not already aware, but then also then making decisions about what kinds of projects they want to consider undertaking given the potential for DOE issues. I think on that front, again, I hear what everyone's saying, and I think, the flavor of the day today does not mean that in 6 months, this is even where the feds are going to be. Also, like on boring, this is the same administration that says drill, baby, drill. So where are we on ground disturbance, actually? So I think rather than, again, overly prescribing or limiting things up front, we should just be broad, see what everyone wants to do. It would delay the project as well, but let's say the Trump administration gets sued again for holding up one of these projects. They're losing in court left and right. And I think, I don't think this, we need to be the heavy hand that's just picking and choosing up front what applicants should and should not want to pursue. So I'm okay with broadness. I'm still good with the broadness and would stay at alternative 1 for decision item 2 and alternative 1 for decision item 3.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't hearing if there was a difference there, or I guess I'm fine with, I guess I'm a little confused as to whether or not Commissioner Nieto's suggestion about maybe proactively informing of the risks would modify something or in our decision, or it's just something, just guidance to staff and to the people implementing the program.
It would be more outreach guidance to staff, and I think per the comments we received about helping folks with onboarding and training and applying for this process and letting them know what the road ahead looks like and how important that is, that would be a piece of that guidance.
Okay. And Chair Strand, you were suggesting not including that in the guidance, or you were open to it? I guess
I don't think that there's this, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's specific language
Right.
that's being proposed as to be included in the guidance, other than the things that we're looking at on here.
Yep.
And then the other geothermal addition. I think this is another one of those programs where we are so lucky to have the staff that we have. And we have a track record of success. To me, they are flexible, they can act accordingly, they have relationships, they know with applicants, they have relationships with DOE. Like, to me, this is a trust the process. And that includes making sure that when they are engaging in their back and forth with applicants or potential applicants, that those all the things that we're talking about are included in those part of the
Felt like it
conversation
is, yeah.
without stifling,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So I think there's a needle that can be thread easily there without.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. I'm totally.
Sorry that I wasn't clear.
No, I'm totally comfortable with that then. So I'm at alternative 1 and the new bullet on geothermal and everything that Commissioner Nieto laid out. I'm
And if,
supportive of.
yeah, and if adopting the red line changes is not alternative 1, because those are modifications, that's fine. I'm just, yes, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right? So
But going with the handout.
with the red lines in the handout,
Yeah.
not for decision item 2,
Right,
not
not for
changing the
available,
budgets,
not
not
the
doing
budget. Yep.
prioritization. Yep, okay.
Yep.
And the addition of the bullet.
And yes. Which, did we decide whether, should you want that to go under the comprehensive energy plans? To differentiate it from the market transformation?
I was originally
Or-
suggesting it could be within that sub-bullet, but I think a standalone sub-bullet, as Commissioner Nieto was saying, is probably cleaner, because there's already a lot sort of piled into that comprehensive energy planning. So I think as a 1, 2, 3, 4, a 6th bullet there would be
Okay.
fine.
And would someone propose?
Could it be a
exact language
sub-bullet
that
to
we-
the comprehensive energy plan, since it's technically
It could be,
an
yeah.
energy plan, but like, we
Yeah.
want to, you know what I mean? Like, I worry if we make it a standalone number 6, it's a little confusing.
So I was thinking that, originally, I think what I suggested was potential for generating energy locally, potential for utilizing geothermal energy, comma, and creation of goals in energy saving. So
Yep.
adding it right in there where we're listing things that could be part of the planning,
I think that's
because it
fine.
doesn't necessarily fit with generating energy
Locally,
locally.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
It's
think that
really just moving energy around if we're going to get into the thermodynamics of it.
It is, and just to clarify, the comprehensive energy plans, that point is really, those are really kind of community comprehensive energy plans. So we might want to just
Separate it.
let staff separate it out and kind of come up with the wording in the application instructions. I mean, I think the wording is fine, but
Like, for
as
the
opposed to
best place.
tinkering too much,
Yeah.
like, to your point, they can kind of delve into it. But that first dot point is for kind of a local community comprehensive
Got it.
plan.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fair. So that wouldn't necessarily be just the kind of equivalent of the feasibility study, microgrid plan, like for geothermal. Yes,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm fine with that.
same.
They can hear us.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so overall, working toward a motion here, we are at the alternative 1, we're keeping the table. We already have plenty of direction to the team about adding some items to the application instructions, as we've discussed, and that's not a modification to the alternative, it's our discussion here. And then finally, overall funds per activity and overall budget, everyone was at the $10 million and at the funds per activity that is listed in the table in our memo. So with that, for docket 9709 FG 2026, I move we approve the program design and budget for the Energy Innovation Grant Program Round 6, consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Nieto, for leading that discussion, and thank you both for the good discussion on a program that is very important, and looking forward to seeing what happens there. Our last discussion item of the day is number 16, docket 5 CE 159, and Commissioner Hawkins is going to lead our discussion of this one. Thank you.
Thank you. So today we have an application by Wisconsin Electric, Wisconsin Public Service, and Madison Gas and Electric that are proposing to jointly acquire, construct, and operate 2 solar facilities. The 94.4 megawatt Good Oak solar facility in the town of Lewiston and the 67 megawatt Gristmill solar facility in the towns of Columbus and Fountain Prairie. Of the total 165 megawatts of the 2 projects and the total $360 million price tag, WEPCO is proposing to own 80% of the facilities, and Pub Service and MG&E are both proposing to own 10% of the 2 facilities. I'll note that, as discussed in the record for these projects, WEPCO has entered into agreements with the Lighthouse Data Center in Port Washington, committing to subscribe to 70% of the projects. And this is, of course, contingent on the approval of the proposed WEPCO VLC tariff, which we have not yet taken up and we are not discussing today. The contingency on that did not really factor into my decision for these projects because the applicant's modeling did not consider the load for that project. And so when it comes to WEPCO's needs analysis, the analysis stands regardless of those VLC commitments. So I just wanted to be clear on that since it did come up in various parts of the record. So the 2 projects that we have are the final 2 projects in a 7-project group referred to as Tranche 1 within the application. And all of the other projects within the tranche utilize the same ownership structure. So those have all come before the commission, and these are the final 2 of the 7 to be reviewed. The statutory overview of how we are reviewing these projects is a bit different than some of those others in that tranche because each of the projects falls under the 100 megawatt threshold. No CPCN is required for their review, and this is a unique result because the siting authority over the permitting occurs at the local level. And so this is distinct from some of the larger projects that we've reviewed recently. So per the application, the project developer has already obtained conditional use permits in Columbia County and received no local opposition during the public hearings. The affected towns provided recommendations in support of the conditional use permit with conditions. And I just want to emphasize this point because often we see large projects come to us with a lot of concerns related to siting, and the commission has to consider land use and development plans and all of the local impacts. And we have a narrower set of determinations to make here today, given the size of these 2 projects. So I just wanted to call that out. So, however, since these applicants are public utilities and propose to acquire and construct the projects, they have come to us for the certificate of authority that is required before they can commence construction of the projects. The legal standard is set out in statute 196.49 sub 3 sub B, and it states that no construction can occur until they have received a certification from the commission. And we have the usual standards that spell out how we must review this type of project. And it lists that the commission may refuse to certify the acquisition if it appears that any of the 3 following occur, and that is the substantial impairment of efficiency of the service of the utility, providing facilities unreasonably in excess of the probable future requirements, or when placed in operation, do the projects add to the cost of service without proportionally increasing the value or available quantity of service. So those are the 3 usual things. Again, those statutory criteria guide our decision-making. They provide a standard for our review and analysis, and if the proposed transaction appears to do any of those 3 things, we may deny it, but we do not have to. So that's sort of the overall governing language that we are working within today. I will also note that there are other considerations related to the use of brownfields, the energy priorities law, and various environmental considerations. And all of those have been fully reviewed and are summarized in the memo that staff presented to us. The EA is in the record for these projects. And there has been a thorough review of the environmental factors prepared as part of the environmental assessment per usual. And Since this is a CA and not a CPCN, we do not have a formal decision matrix to walk through. Instead, we have 7 separate decisions before us to consider. And the 7 decisions that we have to consider are 3 applicants times each project. So we have 6 for that, and then we have our final decision on other conditions. So we have 3 for the acquisition of Good Oak, we have 3 decisions for the acquisition of Gristmill, and we have our final decision on other order conditions that we would like to apply. I will walk through all of my positions and then turn it over to my colleagues to do the same. I do have some suggestions for condition language that aims to keep us consistent with the language that we discussed last week. So I will pivot to a high-level project summary and then get into my positions. So the Good Oak Solar Generating Facility is 98.4 megawatts at approximately $215.7 million, excluding AFUDC. It's located in the town of Lewiston and occupies an 800-acre project area. The Gristmill Solar Generating Facility is at 67 megawatts, costs approximately $144.9 million, excluding AFUDC, located in the towns of Columbus and Fountain Prairie, and occupies a 400-acre project area. Both of the projects also include underground collector circuits, substations, access roads, O&M buildings, and gen tie lines to connect to the broader transmission system. For those that were tuned in last week, in the application, I did have a minor rant on some of the modeling that goes into the support for the projects. I'll do a very brief summary of those because those still apply here today. My flags related to the modeling of these projects were related to accreditation, how wind was analyzed, and solar degradation. I just want to flag again that accreditation is key to determining what and how much of a project is needed. So the capacity requirement and how it is met is all within the accreditation framework. So I want to thank staff again for their good work on getting additional analysis related to accreditation for us to review. Again, I harped on this last week that I do not believe that the applicant's original approach is appropriate. So I was really thankful to see how staff nudged the applicants in a better direction as it relates to accreditation. On this topic, in my discussion with staff this week, I've asked staff to bring forward more clear balance sheets for us to look at, just like going out into the future. What is the load need? What is their expected amount of resources, and what is the gap? Right now, all of that information comes to the commission in a discussion of modeling outputs, but it could also come in the form of a very clear table. And so I think that's something that would help simplify some of this lengthy discussion in the memo about the different modeling outputs. So I just wanted to make my colleagues aware of that I suggested that more clear balance sheets on need would illuminate this accreditation, and it would also show what are the targets that all of these utilities will require in the future to meet their needs. So that's something that I just wanted to flag. I also wanted to state that I suggested to staff that all of the sensitivities and scenarios and the modeling outcomes, it'd be useful to me at least if they were summarized in a single table. We see them in a bunch of different sections and the outcomes of all of the different sensitivities. So it's really hard to see all of them together as the different sensitivities are discussed. So just 2 possible improvements for future applications and future dockets that I think would make review easier and more clear. So I just wanted to highlight that when discussing the modeling that was done for these projects. Again, for the wind modeling, we saw artificial limits in place. We also saw a restriction to just wind located in Zone 2 without any support for why that would be appropriate. And I ranted about the solar degradation assumptions last week. I will not reiterate all of that. My concern related to PPAs and the lack of PPAs received by the applicants, although they did not ask for PPAs, that concern stands. And I will not reiterate those issues that I flagged last week, but I will just state that I encourage that evaluation to happen through the cost containment docket that is ongoing at the commission. Ranting on modeling aside, the modeling was very comprehensive, produced a robust set of information for us to analyze, and looked at a wide variety of assumptions and sensitivities. The modeling supports our decision-making and review of whether these projects are in the public interest and meet statutory criteria. Beyond the modeling, there is other information that I considered, and that included information provided by the applicants, such as additional explanation of the benefits of the projects and how the applicants thought those benefits would benefit ratepayers. Those include not only pursuit of clean energy goals, but locking in expiring tax credits and the economic benefits associated with those, and the hedging these projects could provide ratepayers against volatile fossil fuel prices, certainly a timely consideration. I'll walk through my reasoning for why I support both of the projects and discuss all of our decision items, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. So I found overall that the modeling was instructive in many ways. I talked about the great additions and supplements to the modeling that were brought about by staff requests. And I thought that the modeling highlighted the relative value of these resources under a wide range of possible scenarios, including various retirement assumptions of existing resources, which can quite often drive big jumps in need for the applicants. For WEPCO, the resources were selected under almost all of the scenarios and sensitivities, had a pretty clear case for the benefits of these projects. And as I stated earlier, the need sort of stands alone, independent of the VLC application to purchase. And so I thought the modeling demonstrated that very clearly. For pub service, the resources were selected under some of the scenarios and less of the sensitivities. And what was instructive to me and ultimately swayed my decision in support of acquisition was that the modeling regularly showed selection of additional solar in the years 2030 and beyond, and those selections assumed the PTC would be available for those projects. However, it would not be at that point in time under current federal rules. So that suggested to me, and I thought the memo teed it up nicely, that the resources over the longer term do provide value to ratepayers under the current tax treatment. And so that was really helpful for my consideration of Pub Services acquisition of these two projects. As it relates to Madison Gas and Electric, the resources were selected under the most likely scenarios per the applicant, which include uncertainties surrounding the retirement of Columbia, the units at the Columbia Generating Station. And I think this is fair as they are a minority owner of that facility. I also thought the arguments around the relatively small difference in cost effectiveness of the various scenarios where the projects were not in the least cost plan. I thought the evidence provided that while they were not technically least cost, they were incrementally more expensive, and then the other benefits that I was discussing can sort of outweigh any incremental cost increase associated with these projects because it was relatively marginal and not a very material cost increase. Lastly, as it relates to the modeling and the support for the projects, many of the modeling outputs highlighted the difference between standalone solar and solar plus storage hybrid. And I'll just note that looking at these projects and the potential long-term value for ratepayers, that utility ownership of these projects and the point of interconnection associated with them leaves these resources open for the possibility that storage can be added at a later date as needs evolve. And so there could be additional optionality value associated with these projects to meet future needs. And that would basically utilize existing infrastructure and potentially be cost effective for ratepayers. So I'm interested to see how those options are considered in the future, given that these facilities do not have storage associated with them today. So in summary, the modeling results here suggest that under a wide variety of scenarios, the acquisition of the projects will be part of the applicant's least cost generation expansion plans when compared to alternatives. And additionally, the acquisitions would also provide customer benefits and align with the overall generation plans and carbon reduction goals of the three utilities. Speaking of just one other additional customer benefit that I think might be worth noting here, I'll just point out that this project or these projects are another in the decade-plus streak of power generation projects that this commission will be approving for our regulated utilities that do not consume a meaningful amount of water. And I just thought that was interesting. So my decisions on the acquisition have already been stated, and I've foreshadowed that I have a condition to get us in line with what we did last week. And I'll state that now, because I said I was going to do everything before turning it over. So I'll just keep on talking. So the condition language that we hashed out, I'm suggesting the exact same, except for we have to have projects plural, because we have 2 projects this week and not just 1 project. So we spent a lot of time hashing out that language just 7 days ago, so I will not read it out loud. I believe it was properly captured by legal in my review of it. Just with the one change that projects needs to be plural because we have 2. I'll note that last week Commissioner Nieto caught a great typo, and that is not present here. That was captured correctly. However, throughout the conditions, there are several other instances of applicants and projects not being pluralized correctly given the number of applicants and the number of projects, and so I'll just flag that for legal, and I will not walk through all of those in painstaking detail, but just wanted to highlight that. So for decision 7, I was at Alt 2 that all of the conditions identified by staff are necessary, with the addition of the condition that we had last week and the cleanup of the plurality in the various places. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Chair Strand.
I am in the same exact position for the same reasons, except for the modeling rant. But I'll just say on that point, I can speak to the division administrator about capacity to do those things, but I'm all for the applicants starting to provide that information in the modeling analysis for us, and have no problem asking for that. I just worry about putting that on our staff. So I'll just leave it at that. But again, yes, for acquisition, alternative 1 across the board, and then for alternatives in decision item 7, I'm at alternative 2 with those changes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you. So I was on the same page with regard to the approvals, and that this is a good value proposition under the wide range of assumptions and the discussion that we've had. I think a couple other notes that I would make with regard to going back to the minor modeling rant or the modeling rant. I thought that was really a valuable discussion last week, and thanks for bringing it up again this week. And as I thought through that after last week going into this one, I would just note, number one, I agree. Clearly, we're all looking forward to looking at these things in a holistic way in the cost containment docket, and also as standalone dockets come up, some of these elements, whether it's continuing to delve into PPAs, RFPs, those are discussions that can continue to evolve and can go back and forth in our ongoing one-off dockets as well. So I just think it's a good thing to call out. I think the same with the wind as well. And I would just note here, we did get joint comments from the construction business group, operating engineers and carpenters advocating for order conditions pertaining to local workforce, which I'm pleased to say they are represented in our order conditions 20G, 20H, and 20I. We did get a comment from a member of the public concerned about eminent domain, and I think to some of the point of your earlier discussion about this being a public utility acquisition of public utilities acquiring a couple smaller CAs and what that means in terms of the legal parameters. I would just note for them that as part of the approval process in this docket, we're approving construction siting, including the location of the generating facilities and the tie lines associated with voluntary leases, and any change or changes would have to go through a minor routing or siting process with us or constitute a reopening of the docket if it's some sort of major change. And with conditions right there with you with the edits and the addition of the change. The only thing I would note here is I think we had a change to do under order condition 10 where we might need to modify the language to order condition 10, which is about AFUDC. And so let's see here. I believe that currently reads that the calculation of AFUDC shall not be based on a cost greater than $32 million for Good Oak and greater than $22.6 million for Gristmill. And should say the calculation of AFUDC shall not be based on a cost greater than $215.7 million for Good Oak and greater than $144.9 million for Gristmill. But with that, all my alts are Alt 1 and then Alt 2 on the order conditions. Thanks.
Thanks for that and good catch. So typically we just do the capital cost of the project without AFUDC as the basis for the AFUDC calculation, and that's the change in 10. Great. All right. We're good? Awesome. I think we're ready for a motion then, and I'll quit leading this discussion.
In docket 5 CE 159, I move we approve the joint application to acquire and construct Good Oak and Gristmill solar projects consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins, for leading our discussion of that. It's scheduled for Thursday, April 9, 2026 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, April 9, 2026 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.